joining us here now. Tanya at Penguin Random House Canada for their gift of books for me and for the raffle. And if you haven't money, where Kaylee is sitting, you don't have a raffle ticket with your name. I'm going to start with an acknowledgement of where we are right now. Junction Reads exists in Toronto, which for thousands of years has been the traditional land of the Wyandot, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, including the Chippewas and Mississaugas of the Credit. It is still home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work in the community on their territory. So how it's gonna work is every author's gonna read for however long they want to read, and then we're just gonna have a 5 to 10 minute mingle. You can get raffle tickets, you can buy books, and then we'll come back for a Q&A. So we're gonna start with Safia. Safia Fazlul is the author of 2 novels, The Harem and The Red One, both published by Mwenzi House. She holds a BA from the University of Toronto. Born in Bangladesh, she moved immediately to Oslo, Norway, where she lived until moving to Canada at the age of 11. She lives with her family in Toronto and is currently working on a collection of poetry and a 3rd novel. And I just wanted to add, since I found today an interview that you did in 2012, there is a still live challenge to anybody who wants to play Scrabble. She's guaranteed going to beat you. Safia, thanks for coming.
And also short. Let's go back about where the book I'm reading from. So the book is about, if you haven't read it, it's about Nisha, and she looks like your average, South Asian girl living in the GTA, coming from a nice family, married to a nice guy. But behind it all, she has a lot of trauma from her childhood, and she's dealing with it. The part that I want to read is a flashback to when she's 14, when she finally tells her mom. So what's happening here is that they're going to, the family friend that raped her is getting married. And her mom doesn't know, but her mom is getting ready to attend his wedding. And obviously Nisha does not want to go. So this is the thing. I obeyed my mother and shut up. Habits are hard to break, but I didn't believe I had said anything wrong. Until then, I had honored my parents blindly, even when they did unIslamic things, which was daily, but they could do no wrong. But now the rose-colored veil of ignorance had been yanked off my young eyes, and I saw what my parents truly were. 2 self-righteous sinners who had sex and forced me to live in this miserable world. To show me who was boss, my mother commanded in Hindi, "You will wear my old purple sari. You're far too fat for any of the sari kamises, so we will just wrap the sari around you." I looked at the purple sari she began to unfold. It had no embellishments except some design at the edge, stitched with silver thread. It was heavy and opaque, the kind of fabric the older aunties always wore on casual visits. My mother was so ashamed of my body, she'd rather hide me in this hideous outfit than have me wear something that might make me feel pretty. I'm not wearing that. I crossed my arms and shook my head firmly. And I'm not going to this wedding, Mom. Why do you kids always have to make everything so difficult? She snapped. I didn't even say anything, Tariq, my younger brother, complained. What's the big deal? I asked my mother. I'm not feeling well, so I'll just stay home while you guys go and have fun. People will wonder where you are. What people? Who on earth will care where I am? I raised my voice. People talk, Nisha. She yelled and wagged her finger at me. You Canadian kids don't understand the meaning of reputation. Of course people will wonder why we didn't bring our daughter to it. I don't care. I cut her off and screamed. I don't give I can swear, right? I don't give a fuck about your reputation. As soon as I shouted out the F word, Tariq jumped away from me, showing my mother he was not on my side. I never used the F word in front of my family until that evening. They both stared at me like I was an intruder, a completely unrecognizable stranger, threatening them in their home. I shrunk into the corner of the couch, afraid of what was going to happen next. My mother's eyes were red and bulging as she slowly walked towards me. You're swearing in my house, right here, right to your mother's face, right in front of your baby brother? I looked into my mother's eyes firmly, ready for whatever she was going to say or do to me. I wasn't going to Riyadh's wedding to be mocked and laughed at by Sonia and her friends, just to save my parents' precious so-called reputation. I refused to see Riyadh happy and celebrating, getting away with rape. He had murdered the best part of me. Nothing was going to change my mind, not even the fear of my raging mother. You're going, she shouted. She stood over me, puffing her chest out with authority. A bolt of frustration and anger struck me, and I grabbed a throw pillow and charged her. You can't make me, you bitch. I bellowed as I thrust the pillow so powerfully my mother fell to the floor. You're a mean idiot, Tara, tearful with shock, scowled at me before running to my groaning mother. I ran to the comfort and safety of my room, leaving them both on the floor. I turned the lights off, shut the door, but didn't lock it, because it was just a matter of time before my mother would come marching in. I wish she would beat me because I deserved it for pushing her. My pillows were wet with tears as I sobbed in disbelief of the monster I'd become. I missed the old me, and I wanted to desperately resurrect the naive child. All the kindness, curiosity, and friendliness in me had been replaced with anger, resentment, and apathy. I didn't want to live the rest of my life like this. I was just human skin around a whirlpool of darkness. As I expected, my mother flung the door open just a few minutes later. Too afraid to show your face, she sneered as she flicked the lights on. She saw me with my face down on the pillow, crying quietly on my bed. She turned the lights back off and turned on the small lamp on the nightstand. To my surprise, she sat by my hips and gently put a comforting hand on my back. What's wrong, Nisha? I had waited forever for her to ask that. I turned around and threw my arms around her waist, crying unashamedly on her lap. My mother was angry, bitter. My mother was an angry, bitter, selfish woman, but she was mine, my only mother, and I needed her protective arms. What's wrong, sweetie? She asked worriedly as she began to wipe my tears. I parted my lips to tell her everything that Riyadh and Sonia had done, but the words were stifled by the frightening thought they were so close to being freed. Once I let them out, my mother would know, and the rest could be predicted. I spared myself the crippling anxiety and instead curled up like a baby next to her, clutching her thigh and digging my head into her lap. She asked me again and again what was wrong, but I begged her to just be quiet and let me cry. I'm your mother, Nisha. She squeezed my hand. You can tell me anything. I gathered myself, wiped my tears away, and sat up. My eyes scanned the door, making sure Tariq wasn't listening to everything. Riyadh raped me. I muttered the words fast and incoherently, my eyes fixed on the clammy palms. My mother leaned in, not hearing what I said. The words had been said, and there was no time machine. I felt as if I rocketed up from the bottom of the ocean, and now my lungs were filled with wonderful air. My legs felt so weightless, it was like they were floating over the edge of my bed. The heavy lump in my throat was gone, and out of the blue, I received the courage to look my mother in the eye. Riyadh raped me, I repeated. He raped me. My mother recoiled with disgust. What are you talking about? Every time he forced me to go to their house last year, he raped me in his room. He touched you? She growled. Yes. Did he? Yes. My mother turned away from me and hid her face in her hands, scratching her forehead. She said nothing for a while until she suddenly interrogated me in English. You tell the truth, Nisha? Yes. So you're not a virgin anymore? I was shocked that my mother even knew that word, and more shocked that she had blatantly used it. We never discussed sex in the family. My parents always changed the channel on TV if two people were kissing in a scene or even talking in bed. And now he was asking me, was I not a virgin? There in the faint yellow light of the lamp, I saw a look of disgust, shame, and hopelessness on her face. A look that would remain with me until the day I died. I shook my head to her question, unable to utter any word. She held back her emotions for a moment, then quietly melted down in tears. To her, a Muslim mother who genuinely believed her daughter should remain untouched until marriage, it was the end of her world. Riyadh had ripped the crown of her mother's head. Watching my mother cry was a rare sight. She would cry easily while watching Safia Fazlul movies, but hardly ever at real-life episodes. She was a cold woman, and I was surprised and devastated to see that coldness break down. But no matter how much it hurt to hear her sobbing, I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. I needed her to comfort me. I needed her to hold me and tell me she would avenge me, that Riyadh and Sonia would not get away with what they did. I needed her to tell me I was worthy, and that the thoughts of being filthy were all just in my head. I needed her to tell me she loved me, no matter what. But she did nothing.
The tension surrounding that scene with the mom. I honestly, when I was reading it, I thought maybe she's not going to tell her that this whole thing is going to be carried around. Or I mean, she's still carrying around like trauma. Sorry, I will lower this again. Amy and I, We're living up here. It's hard to breathe. Amy Jones is the author of the novels We're All in This Together, a national bestseller, winner of the Northern Lit Award, a finalist for the Stephen Leacock Medal for Humor, and named a Best Book of the Year by the Globe and Mail and Quill Inquirer. And Every Little Piece of Me, named a Best Book of Summer by the Globe and Mail, Chatelaine, and Now Magazine. Her debut collection of stories, What Boys Like, won the Metcalf Rook Award and was a finalist for the Relit Award. Her fiction has won the CBC Literary Prize for short fiction, appeared in Best Canadian Stories and the Journey Prize Stories, and been selected as Longform's Pick of the Week. Originally from Halifax, she now lives in Hamilton with every other writer. Amy is also a mentor at Flying Books, which I personally will strongly recommend to any writer in the room. Amy, thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello to everyone online. Hello to everyone in the room. Thank you again to everyone at Junction Reads, at Type Books. Thank you to my wonderful co-readers. I'm really honored to be here today. I am going to read from my latest novel called Pebble and Dove. I don't think that I really require any setup here. I just have to decide. I'm making a time decision here. Okay. All right. So the novel is told, it's a multi-voice novel, so there's like several different perspectives, and one of them is Lauren, and Lauren is sort of she's caught in between her daughter and her mother, the memory of her mother, in her intergenerational war. And this section is just a little flashback section. When Lauren got pregnant, she told Jason at the top of a roller coaster. It was the August before their senior year of college, and they both had summer jobs at Thrillville, an amusement park just outside of Lenox Heights, where Lauren sold ice cream and snow cones, and Jason worked as an operator on the Expedition G-Force. Lauren had been feeling off for weeks, the world around her taking on a muted quality, as though everything was shrouded in cotton. She craved peanuts and couldn't stand the smell of the hard lemonade Jason bought from his boss, who sold it out of a cooler for $3 a bottle. One time, she threw up on the Expedition G-Force after having ridden it at least twice a day for months without so much as a swoon, and Jason had to clean it up while Lauren sat with her head between her legs. But from the moment she found out she was pregnant, contentment settled into her body. Here was the start of their family growing inside her. Here was someone they had made, someone who was going to have all the best parts of both of them. And in her dreamy, hormone-drunk state, there was no doubt in her mind that Jason was going to be as elated as she was. Otherwise, she wouldn't have told him at work. Otherwise, she wouldn't have met him just as his shift was ending and asked, "Can we ride?" He eyed her, taking a drink from his plastic Thrillville water bottle. "You're not going to puke again, are you? Because you're going to clean it up this time." "I'm not, I promise." Jason took her hand and muttered, "Sorry, security testing," as they pushed past all the kids waiting for the front car, the line snaking back from the gates and curling around itself within the corral. As the train chugged to the top, Lauren turned to face Jason as best she could within the confines of the headrest. She pictured herself as one in a long line of women opening their mouths to say this very thing, nervous, or sad, or scared, or joyous, or none of these, or all of them. Some whispering the news in bed from pillow to pillow, others shouting to the clouds from mountaintops, or the apex of a roller coaster. "I'm pregnant," Lauren said, before the wind took the words away from her. Jason whipped his head toward her, the heavy plastic from the headrest digging into his cheek. "You're what?" "I'm pregnant," she said again, and then the car began to drop, just as she'd imagined. What an amazing story to tell their child, she thought, that her existence was made known to her father as he went over a cliff, willingly succumbing to the pull of gravity. When the ride was over, Lauren laughed and pushed her hair out of her face, relieved that she hadn't vomited. Then she turned to Jason and saw him sitting there in the car, his hands white-knuckled on the safety bar, tears streaming down his face. At first, she thought it must have been from the wind. "You're not supposed to ride the coaster if you're pregnant," he said softly. "It's right there on the sign." "Are you crying because you're happy?" she asked. Jason didn't answer. He just stared straight ahead until the safety bar raised, then climbed out of the car, wiped at his eyes, and walked away, leaving Lauren standing on the platform, swallowing furiously to keep from throwing up. Lauren often thinks about the moment they plunged over the edge together, the drop momentarily lifting them from their seats before the G-force pinned them back down, their future laid out before them, as smooth and fixed as the coaster's track. As the last moment, she felt truly happy, truly free. She had believed motherhood would calm the unease she had felt in her own skin her entire life, but it only amplified it. Now, she wonders if Imogen felt the same, if she had been expecting motherhood to make her feel whole, only to discover it fragmented her in ways she could have never foreseen. Suddenly, Lauren is overcome with grief at the thought that she will never be able to ask her. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're just like whipping through it. I'm like, I don't know why I'm doing that. 11 years, everybody. 11 years. Okay. Anuja Varghese, yep, is a pushcart nominated writer whose work appears in many esteemed literary magazines. Her work has been recognized in the Prism International Short Fiction Contest, the Pigeon Pages Fiction Contest, and the Alice Munro Festival Short Story Competition. Anuja also has work featured in Best Women's Erotica Volume 6, When Other People Saw Us, They Saw the Dead, and Queer Little Nightmares from Arsenal Pulp Press. Chrysalis, her debut short story collection from House of Anansi, won the Writers' Trust of Canada Dane Ogilvy Prize for LGBTQ2S+ emerging writers and the Governor General's Literary Award for Fiction. Anuja is also a professional grant writer in the room. Currently the fiction editor with the Expure magazine. Anuja lives in Hamilton with your family. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. It is lovely to be here in Toronto. I'm going to read a little bit from Chrysalis, online folks, in-person folks. So it's 15 short stories about women and girls in moments of transformation. Some transformations are for the better, some are for the monstrous. The story I'm going to read is a haunted house story. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. It's called In the Bones. The farm where Devika and Revika were born could not be found on any map. It existed real as all its broken down boards and its long abandoned barn groaning against the howling winds sent forth from Lake Erie to batter the field and rattle the rusty silo. Yet the narrow road on which it sat veered off from the highway like a wayward gravel snake seeking to shed its skin in private. It was an hour's drive at least from the nearest ghosts of civilization, and double that in the winter when drifts of snow made the access road virtually impassable. The farm hadn't always been in such a sorry state of disrepair. When Devika and Revika's grandfather, one Mohan Chakraborty, had first arrived from Pondicherry, one of hundreds of migrant workers summoned from the subcontinent in the 1960s to work the fields of a country turned fruitful for a few blessed months each year, the barn and the house in its shadow had been bright red, shining at the edge of an expanse of green surrounded by a white fence. Along with the corn, the melons, the pumpkins, and potatoes Mohan grew from the stingy ground, he nurtured alongside them a budding romance with the farm owner's fair-haired daughter. They were married and the farm passed into the young couple's care. They tried for many years to have a child with no luck, until one day, while she was weeping in the grass, the field whispered a solution into Devika and Revika's grandmother's ears. She listened, and though she got what she desired, the farmhouse got something too. Devika and Revika's mother proved to be a flighty creature who left the farm as soon as she could and returned round with twin girls in her belly. There was no record of her death nor her mother's before her. There were no witnesses save a cracked mirror and the moon, to a terrified young woman and her father praying to all the gods they knew, as two tiny blue babies lay in their arms, cold and silent. Who can say what deal was struck, so that in the morning 4 dark eyes opened, and the house was filled with the cries of newborns, alive and well, wailing their motherless woe at the remnants of the winter storm outside. In his heart, Mohan knew that his wife and his daughter should both have been returned to ash, the ash released into water, into air. But the fields had called them, had compelled him to bury their bodies, half rotted by the time the earth was soft enough to open, and he had obeyed. 2 gravestones marked their resting place, the only small patch of field he dutifully tended and cleared of brush, while the rest of the land fell to neglect and decay. He shut up the room of the house where the thing nobody saw had happened and set about raising the twins, Devika and Revika, as best he could. They grew as girls will, if left unchecked, curious and bold, 2 bright flowers reaching for the sun. In appearance, they were exactly alike, but in nature, they could not have been more different. Devika took after her grandmother, capable and quick, born with a love of the farm in her bones. Revika, on the other hand, was willful and wild, resentful of the ramshackle farm that was not even worthy of its own marker on the map. They took a bus to and from the country school in the nearest little town that the highway passed, except when it snowed and the single side-winding road to the farm was lost to mountainous drifts left unplowed. Eager though they were to be invited to birthday parties and into town for movies and milkshakes, children have a sense for strangeness, and so the twins had a few real friends. The distance others kept drove Devika closer to the land, and she grew determined to restore the farm to its former glory. By contrast, Revika grew restless and began to dream of adventure somewhere far away. The farm, for its part, heard the yearning of their young hearts, and after many years dormant, decided to deliver them a gift. It began during the summer the girls turned 12. The days were long, and they soon became bored with books and bike riding and watching their grandfather mutter at gravestones that were unmoved by his grief. Devika had availed herself of a box of tools she found rusting in the barn and roamed the house looking for things to fix. Revika followed, sullen, not looking for anything at all other than her chance to escape. Perhaps that's why the farmhouse chose to make its magic known to her first. Davy, did you hear that? Devika looked up from her tinkering with the broken banister at the top of the stairs. She cocked her head and listened, then rolled her eyes and went back to her work. Revika followed the sound, a soft sort of scraping to the end of the hallway, to the door that had always been locked. The knob turned smoothly beneath her palm, and the door swung open, inviting her into the musty space of a bedroom, draped in heavy sheets and coated from corner to corner in a thick layer of dust. Devika appeared behind her, peering over her shoulder. "How'd you get the door open?" she asked. I didn't, Revika replied, already making her way into the room. Devika hesitated. "Are you sure we should be in here?" The room felt removed from the rest of the house, darker than it should have been, even with the shuttered windows in the middle of the day. A sheet covering a chest of drawers fluttered, although there was no breeze, and they both heard again the soft scrape of a drawer opening, then a gentle thud as it closed again. "That's weird," Devika said, pushing past her sister to pull the sheet away. They watched as the top drawers slid open and remained that way. An invitation. Devika looked inside the drawer, which was empty, then got on her hands and knees to check if either the floor or the chest was slanted. Meanwhile, Revika pulled sheets free of a writing desk, a wooden chair, and an oval mirror attached to the chest of drawers. She traced her name in the dust on the mirror's surface, revealing as she did so the cracks that spiraled out from its center like a spider web woven into glass. "Do you think this was our mom's room?" Revika asked. They knew almost nothing of their mother other than where she was buried out in the field. Revika turned wide-eyed. "Do you think this is where she died? Do you think this room is haunted?" Devika stood, hands behind her back, and nodded. "I think It's definitely haunted, she whispered. By rats! Gleefully, she thrust forward a recently dead rat discovered beneath the chest of drawers, dangling the rodent's corpse in Rebecca's face. Rebecca shrieked and stumbled backwards, falling onto the bed and raising another cloud of dust. Distracted by Rebecca's cackling and Rebecca's complaints, neither of them felt the farm, the barn, and the house, and the fence, and the field shudder with wanting, barely holding its hunger at bay. But it was a patient thing. It could wait. Rebecca tossed the rat into the open drawer and held up in her other hand a small bit of curved wood, flat on the bottom, jagged on top. It's not haunted, idiot. It's the 90s, not the 1800s or whenever ghosts are from, she said. The chest is missing a foot, see? That's why the drawer won't stay shut. She dropped the broken piece into the drawer for safekeeping and slammed it closed. I bet I can fix it. I just need to find some glue. Now let's get out of here before we get caught. Rebecca ran down the stairs, buzzing with the excitement of finding a secret room. Its oddness was due to being unused, and even if the furniture was useless, a secret was a special thing to have. A gift. Rebecca stood to follow her sister, but movement in the mirror caught her eye, and she turned to look. A flash of dark hair, familiar eyes, a gaping mouth, half woman, half bone. Rebecca frowned and looked again and saw that it was simply her own reflection, fragmented by cracks. She left the room, closing the door behind her. The glue was forgotten when dinner was served, and it was only the next morning, when their grandfather was tending the graves and the girls could return to the room unnoticed, that they heard the scratching from inside the drawer. Rebecca pulled it open, and a rat scampered out, skittering over the drawer's edge before tumbling to the ground and escaping out the door. I thought that they was dead, Rebecca exclaimed. Rebecca closed the drawer. I guess it wasn't, she said, even though she knew that when she had first seen it, it had been dead. It had been, and now was not. The dresser's broken leg tube was gone, and Rebecca didn't need to check to know that it was in its rightful place, made whole or something like it. When did you fix the leg? Rebecca asked. Maybe it was because she had been placed in the drawer first on the night she and Rebecca were born and died and were born again, or something like it. That Rebecca understood the farm for what it was. She looked in the mirror and made with it a pact. This morning, she replied, before you woke up. So they set about tidying the space, and for a while delighted in the shared deception of a room that was meant to be locked, but had opened somehow just for them. They shared their summer secrets there, kept their treasures hidden there. But before she went to bed each night, Devika always made sure to check the top drawer for anything her sister might have left behind. She wanted no cause to tempt the house into transformations that could not be explained. At summer's end, they went back to school, and the room being just a room in a dilapidated house on a long-dead farm, Rebecca soon lost interest. The room became Devika's alone, and she used it to make the house whole. Into the drawer went the banisters' broken spindles, in went bits of faded red board peeling off from the slowly rotting barn. In went a pair of baby bunnies mangled by the mower's blades. In went soil and seeds and bug-infested vegetables and bird-eaten fruit. And everything that went in came out the next morning something new, something better. For all these small favors, the house asked nothing in return. It was biding its time, watching the girls ripen. And I'll leave it there.
Book was such a joy to read. So we're gonna take a break, 5 minutes maybe. Since we're like just speeding, we'll keep that momentum going. So you can get raffle tickets. There's 2 book bundles you can look at to see whether or not you want Anuja, Amy, and Safia's books for free. And you can buy them and get them signed afterwards. And we'll be back in 5 minutes for the Q&A. Thank you. Come on. people online.
Yeah.
Need my glasses even for like this big roller.
I tried to make them big, but
So we have a Bagoo tote bag. We have the books plus Amelia Confetti, who we had an online conversation with. And this has 2 brand new. Shane, this is an incredible book for anyone who wants to read about how disgusting the Ontario healthcare system is. And it was really moving. And these are red. I read them, but I'm a gentle reader. So this is brand new because I got an extra one that just popped in the mail from Christina and Nancy. And I was like, okay. Here we go. And if you win, anyone online wins. I guess I'll give instructions back. Kevin!
Yeah, I have gotten too many books from you.
I'm gonna pick again, but your donation is big, so your name is in here. Kevin.
let's do it.
You must.
Can't say no at this.
Take it out. And you can get them signed. I won't be printing. See. Aaron! And last minute, you can choose. You can have this or the tote bag.
Oh, I'll take the photos.
It's a bag. Remember to be. Okay, this is for the tote bag. Thank you. Kevin. Kevin. I'm not kidding. Could it be? Kevin. Kevin. I want somebody online to win it because this will be far like cheaper to mail. Yeah.
I read the book. I signed and I love it. Put it back in.
I'm like, I'm clearly not good at this, so. Zarmina Rafi. Oh, online. Zarmina, congratulations. If you can send me an email to junctionreads@gmail.com and I will mail it out to you. There you go. Thanks, everybody. This is like the nerve-wracking time for me. You want to, yes, please. Make our way up. About to over this. Anyway. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody. So I have a quick question for each of you, and then general questions about writing and familiar or shared themes, I guess. So please forget about that. Sorry. They can't hear us online if this is not on, so they missed all of the excitement of the raffle. I'm sorry. Safia, in the red one, Nisha is trapped by propriety, both in how she is expected to behave as a married woman living in polite society and as a young girl, where she is not overtly blamed for the rape, but told to be quiet. The shame. But it's not Nisha that was so moving for me. I was really moved by Amatilla, the character who in the book is coming to a big fundraising thing, and she's coming to share her story, and Nisha knows immediately that she's lying. She sees this familiar trauma in her, and that's when she makes the decision to do something very drastic. I wanted to talk to you about that character and how you knew she needed to be in the story, and how you knew she was going to be that kind of helper for Nisha.
I think what I wanted to do was I want to show that the whole book, the inspiration is from someone I knew back in university, and she was this really brilliant girl who just completely fell apart towards the end of the fourth year, because she had the exact same thing. What happened to her, and she couldn't, she had all this natural brilliance, but she couldn't become anything. She started doing drugs, and it was just the end for her. So what I wanted to do is I want to have a character that would show what could happen if someone's able to express what happened to them. It's not being shut down. So the Amatullah, I mean, she went out, she got out of the slums in India, and she was able to go and tell her story, and she became this great, celebrity author. So I just wanted to have her in there to show, both these women have gone through the same thing. One turned out one way, and the other one turned out the other way, because I want to show the importance of how important it is to be able to express what happened to you when it comes to abuse. So that's why I put her in the story. She needed to be there.
Yeah. That is, I mean, if there's a lot of reasons to read this book, but the drama and intensity in those final scenes it was a really impressive read experience. Amy, I want to talk about manatees, and I sort of felt like Amy's going to go, great, brilliant question about manatees, but it's difficult to not be moved by Pebble and her story and the ethical dilemma of animals in captivity, and the relationship that she has with Dove and Ray, and subsequently all of the other people that touch those people. So I wanted you to talk to me about her, how she came to you, how the story came to you, and how she kind of came alive.
I never get sick of talking about manatees. I could talk about them all day long. In case for those of you who haven't read the book, Pebble of the title is a manatee. There's a little picture over here. And I'm very lucky to have a very supportive editor who, when I came to her and said I wanted to write a book about manatee, she said, cool, let's do it. So, I mean, there's a couple of different starting points for the story. I think, one of them is that I'm just obsessed with all animals. And I've been sort of over the years, my awareness has been growing as to, animal rights and just sort of the idea of animals in captivity. My sister actually studies animal ethics. She's a professor of animal ethics. So she has opened my eyes a lot to, just sort of that human, non-human animal relationship. And, as much as I really, and not just me, I know as humans, we really want to have up close experiences with animals. We want to see them. We want to interact with them. We want to have cute moments at the zoo with the orangutans. And we want to we want to have those special moments. And I, just like anyone else, really wanted to have those moments. And I loved going to aquariums and seeing having the manatee come up and press his little nose against the glass. I started to realize, started to think about it from their perspective. which is, one of the whole reasons that I write is to sort of see the world through other perspectives. Usually that's human. Usually that's other people. But in this case, I started thinking about, why we want this, like why it's so important to us to have these like up close interactions with animals. And the story specifically of Pebble, a lot of Pebble's story is taken from the story of a manatee named Snooty, who lived at the South Florida Museum in Bradenton, which is near where my parents live. And Snooty was the oldest manatee in captivity, and has like the aquarium actually in the book is sort of based on the aquarium where he originated, and then was taken there to the South Florida Aquarium, and they had a big birthday party for him every year. He was like, I think, like, I always forget, I should know this. It was like 70 something. Like he was, and like in the wild, manatees, they're a lot of them, they have a very high mortality rate in the wild, and usually like 20 to 30 years is a long time for a manatee to live in the wild. And Snooty, unfortunately, met his end at the aquarium in an accident, which was really tragic. Yeah, it was horrible. And after having visited him a whole bunch of times, I was like, I wish there was a different ending for him. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to write a different ending for him. And so that's sort of how that story began, because I started thinking about like the fact that, manatees, we don't really know how long they could live. Like, and in my imagination, I wanted them to live forever. So in my mind, Pebble does live forever. Anyway, so I wanted to give a good ending for Pebble, and in my mind and in my imagination for Snooty. So that's sort of where her genesis came from.
Okay. I just did one of those like swallow an air bubble things.
Well, I can just keep talking. You do have a question.
So sorry. So annoying. You think? Yeah. I'm just really upset. No, and then
I will say there's a chapter at the end from Pebble's perspective, which is really, really good. I loved it. So it's like a nightmare. Having like a uncontrollable coughing fit. I'm a professional. Anuja, the stories of Chrysalis are dreamy, mythical, magical, real, and surreal. And they're not connected by genre. You're not connected by genre. And at times, that just listening to you read, it felt like you were reading poetry. In reading it, it feels like you're reading poetry or fairy tales from childhood. And I wanted to talk to you about how you collected these short stories and how you knew at the end that these short stories all belonged together.
So part of that is having a great editor at House of Nancy. So I think when I originally submitted this manuscript, there were probably more stories in it than what actually ended up in the book. And so having a great editor that really was able to say like, okay, so these seem like they belong together, and just to have that mix of like, when you're going through a collection, you're trying to think about like, what is the reader experience of this? So like it's a bit of a genre blending collection. So there's some that are more just straight up, oh nice, water for you. Like contemporary literary fiction, and then some that have these elements of horror and fantasy and fairy tale and myth. So just trying to have that mix of both of those things, and feeling like those things were balanced. So we didn't want anyone to read it and go like, this is a horror collection, and then with one random story that's not horror, right? So it all had to fit together. So yeah, trying to find a bit of that balance, I think. And I also had to like make that decision for myself when I first. I have a great mentor in Farzana Doctor, who is a great author in Toronto. And she was kind of the first one to say to look at my like stories on paper and be like, oh, maybe there's a book here. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's a book here. But when I first had that idea, I was very like, my book is going to be a literary collection and it's going to be very serious. And I had this idea of what I thought that looked like what literary fiction would be and what people would take seriously. And those stories were bad. Like they felt very forced and not like me at all. And then kind of on the side, I was writing the weird shit, right? Like the horror stuff and fantasy like shapeshifters. So at some point I had to just give myself permission to like jam those things together and say like, you know what, those were the stories that were fun for me to write. Those were stories that other people seemed to be having fun reading. So yeah, eventually we just sort of jammed those together and said like, is this a thing? And I was very lucky to have an editor who said like, yeah, it's a thing.
That's awesome. Are there any stories that you wish made it in and didn't, or are you happy?
I think I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to be too. There's like a sex club in it too. Mythical, magical, and then a sex club.
Yeah.
That's fun. So all three of you, anyone who's listening who's been here before is going to think that I'm now obsessed with girl on girl bullying. As I've talked about it, I think 3 out of the last 4 things, but all 3 of you have in your books really, and not just, bullying. Like there's some pretty what happens to Dex with the chasing thing. I was like, oh my gosh, how is he friends with them? The sour milk being poured into her backpack was like gross. And then Sonia, there's nuance now that I've read the entire book, but Sonia standing there at the door and watching Nisha, what happened to Nisha happen. So I wanted to talk to you about that how in some way girl or women on women violence is just so much worse than that boy schoolyard bullying story that we've heard so often. And I just wanted to hear your views on it.
First of all, I agree with what you said. I think I won't call it violence, more like hatred. I'll call it hatred because girls don't do violence. They're rather like notes and stuff. It happened to me in high school. I remember very clearly there was a whole washroom stall. It was just my name and all the horrible things I am. And yeah, it was awful. Yeah. I was being grilled a lot. So I think girls are just, when we grow up, we're told not to hit each other, and violence is bad. It's not ladylike. So it's very it seems like we're more accepting of just talking behind each other's backs. And I haven't read your book, but sour milk, and yeah, it's terrible. Yeah. But that's something like girls, would do. Maybe when they're younger, not older, not women, girls, let's say girls. But I think it's because we're not encouraged to be violent straight up. Guys will just if there's something wrong, they'll punch you in the face. I think I would prefer that actually.
Right. Yeah.
There's something like a little more simple about like a physical, right? Like somebody punches you in the face, that's a thing. But if someone is like playing sort of these like psychological kind of mind games, that's a different kind of violence, really. I think in that story in this book, Milk, yes, it's sort of this bully as an element. I think like layered on top of that is sort of the girl that's being bullied, the victim of the bullying, also has this like fascination almost with her bully. Like there's a little bit of desire for the bully, who she thinks is actually really beautiful, and like she aspires to be like have that kind of power that her bully has. And then it all just takes a very dark turn as she tries to become the bully, and then we sort of see that the bully is perhaps darker in more ways than one. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with what you both said. I think that for me, one of the things is that, in my book, Dove is she's 14 in the book, and she's, an outsider at her school, and she has two close friends, and that's it. She's a scholarship student at a prestigious private school, so there's like a class element involved as well. But for me as a writer, it's the idea that I wanted to a couple things. I love her, but I wanted to put her in trouble. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted to test her mettle in that way. Like, I wanted to show that she was an outsider, but also that she was able to stand up for what she believed in. And so, what you were referencing before with Dex, like, that's one of the reasons she decides to enact revenge, is because a friend of hers is getting, severely bullied by these girls. And so I wanted to give her an opportunity within the narrative to, because she is very, very, like, in only the way a 14-year-old girl can be, very sure of what is right and wrong. And so this was giving her the opportunity to demonstrate that in the narrative. So, as mean as it sounds, like, I had to put her in that position in order to allow those characteristics to come out.
Yeah. And there's also a great story
In Chrysalis where a girl gets punched, deservedly gets punched.
Yes.
Chitra. Yeah. So there is, and definitely in the red one, there is a feeling of things were righted that were wrong. So to follow up on that, I wanted to talk to you about another common theme among your books, and that is this idea of the guilt and shame that people carry around, women carry around, for not being the mother they should have been, for not being the daughter that they're supposed to be. They're the good daughter that they're supposed to be. And I wanted to talk to you about that and how important it is, I guess, in literature to expose that, crap, I guess, that exists in polite society, that women aren't supposed to be the punchers and the
go-getters.
Well, I think it's just general. It's not just women who kind of have to do something because society tells them to do it. It's men too. But I feel like for women, it's more things you have to do for other people, whereas for men, it's like the things you have to do for yourself. You have to be successful. You have to make money. It's, at the end of the day, that kind of helps yourself. Whereas a woman is like the things you do for others. If a rich husband divorces you, you're on your own. So that's what we're always, we tend to be the victims and everything because of that, because we're not working towards our goals. It's more for helping others. And I think it's important to write about that because, what a book's for is for social change, entertainment and social change. So I think it should always be there, especially as a feminist writer. I would always have it in the books, at least.
Yeah, I love that. I think in my stories, because they're so like explicitly about women and girls in these moments of transformation and in many ways sort of clawing back power that gets taken away in all these like everyday ways, right? So, whether it's like a boss that's throwing these kind of microaggressions at someone in the office, whether it's, just dealing with things in a variety of ways. Yes, I think in my stories, I'm kind of using kind of that lens of magic, I guess, using some of those fairy tale elements, mythology, horror sometimes, to play with that idea of how do women reclaim power, right? So we know in the real world, like, that may or may not be possible sometimes, or the ways that we try and do it, we have to do it politely. We have to try and, like, speak up for yourself, but don't speak too loudly. But, the Barbie speech, basically, right? Like, that's what it is in real life. But, in some of these stories, my women and girl characters get to do it by, shape shifting into wolves and ripping people apart. They get to do it in they get to call upon a goddess to like strike someone down with lightning. So just playing with some of those elements in terms of like reclaiming power was part of this book for me.
That's very cool. I don't have a good answer like that. I'm interested, I guess, in like sort of intergenerational relationships between women. And, I always, like, it's kind of a joke and it's kind of not. I always say, I wrote a book about mothers and daughters. I have neither a mother nor a daughter. So it's almost like, when I was a kid, I started writing because I wanted to imagine a life that I didn't have. And I think as I've gotten older and, have actually written some books and stories and started to, and have explored a lot of different facets of that, I'm still always writing to, as I said before, understand other perspectives, understand, get into the minds of other people. But there is also still a part of it that is feeling out the life not lived kind of thing. And as a woman myself and someone who doesn't have children, I think about what other course my life could have taken. And so especially in this book, we had Imogen is Lauren's mother. She is a photographer. She's a very famous portrait photographer, and she basically when she gets pregnant later in life, she sort of chooses her art over her child, even though she says at one point, someone asks her why she decided to have the child, and she said, because people told me I couldn't. Because everyone said that as a woman and as an artist, that I would not be able to maintain the level of passion that I have for my work and also be a mother. And it turns out she can't in this version. But I also think that because as the generations roll on, I think we continually we synthesize those experiences of our foremothers and take that into our own, the way we see the world. So there's also a pendulum swing aspect to it too. So her daughter ends up becoming sort of the opposite kind of mother and trying to be incredibly involved in her daughter's life at all times and try to be perfect, which also doesn't work. So it's sort of this, yeah. So it's sort of taking all of these things that have for previous generations and sort of making your own way with that. So I hope that it's for me it is about exploring what people's options are. I have heard from people that I got some parts of the motherhood stuff right. So but it is again it's imagining it's just relationships between women are what is most interesting to me. And I think that as a reader, I feel there needs to be just more of that out there. And so I'm glad that there's three of us out here that are writing that.
No, and I will echo what was said about the mother-daughter, granddaughter relationships. It was bang on. I felt emotionally connected as someone who lives with her mother.
Oh.
I felt that for sure.
We all read mother, grandmother, stories.
Does anyone else have any questions? I just have a bonus question for the writers in the room and the writers joining us today. To give us a snapshot of your writerly life and to also share what you're working on now. And I will add that Amy and Anuja are doing a drafts and drafts conversation at Gritlit, where they will drink beer and talk about what they're working on right now. So this is just maybe a sneak peek into that.
I think my writer life just started because I wrote my first novel when I was 18, and it was published when I was 23. And for me, they're like, yeah, so you gotta go and actually, advertise the book. And I'm like, I don't want to. Writing for me is like therapy. I don't want to go into a room full of strangers and talk about it. But now, I'm a lot older and I'm a housewife and everything else to do. So now I can be a writer. I just joined a poetry class.
Oh, nice.
And my teacher is Stuart Ross.
Nice.
He's so awesome, yeah. And I'm really enjoying it. It's just I want to go back to the fundamentals of poetry so I can finish my poetry book. Also, dating my life is taking care of my daughter and just going to the library.
Yeah.
Gym library. That's what I always do.
Gym library.
Yeah.
A day in the writerly life. So I have a full-time job. I work at YWCA Hamilton as the grant writer there. So my life is all about trying to balance my job with trying to write, with trying to parent my children, and every now and then I try and like see my family and my friends so they remember I exist. So I don't know. I don't have any good routine or anything like that. I write in the pockets when I can. Yeah, and what I am working on, trying to work on, I am working on revisions to sort of a commercial fantasy novel. Yeah, it's if you think of like a D&D game meets Bollywood, D&D meets Bollywood.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a little bit of smut thrown in there. That's what I'm working on, and I have started. We'll see how it goes, but I have started kind of outlining. There's a story in this collection called the Vatella's Song, and I just feel like there's more there. There's more there, so I've started outlining that as a potential novel.
Look at you. My writing life is complete chaos. I cannot lie, and there's no good reason for it. I don't have kids to look after. I don't have a full-time job. It's just I have a dog. I have a dog who requires me to pay attention to him at all times. Yeah, I mean, I cobbled together a life through a lot of freelance work and teaching here and there. I do, as you mentioned, I do the mentorships through Flying Books, which does keep me quite busy. I find that I still have like no time. And so yeah, I write best at night. My mind is mush for the majority of the day, unless it's like maybe sometimes first thing in the morning, but like the afternoons are just a total write-off for me creatively. But unfortunately, I'm also a very social person, and I like to do stuff. I like to go out at night. So those two things don't really mesh very well. So I gotta figure that out somehow, because I just realized, like, you know, during the pandemic when we were in lockdown and I wasn't going out at all, like I did really like focus quite a bit more on my writing. So yeah, it's time. But yeah, in between all of that, I've managed to I do have another novel that I'm like fighting my way through a first draft of. I don't know, like, for any other writers out there how you feel about like a first draft, but it's for me the worst. I love revision. I love it when I can like take the material that I've already created, move it around, stretch it, play with it. But like the actual first draft for me is a nightmare. So that's where I am right now. So that's also probably why I'm like, oh yeah, totally, I'll like come to your event tonight. Totally, I will go out for dinner with you to avoid baking. I have to face on the bait.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming from Hamilton, coming from Toronto to join us here today, and everyone else coming out to join us, and everyone online right now. That's it, I think. We are not back here until April. The end of April, we're here with Evie Christie, Dave Hurlow, and Michael Marola. And I've got a couple of first 30s thrown in there, which is the Instagram live series. And on March 4th, we're online Junction Reads with Megan Greeley. And there's two big literary festivals coming up. Two of my absolute favorite. Gritlit is coming in April, and Fold starts at the end of April, beginning of May. And you should watch those, and you should watch Canada Reads this year, because I think the books are really diverse, and I think it's going to be interesting. That's it. Jess, thank you. Kaylee, thank you. Everyone else, thank you.